everybody, welcome back to Readers That Write. Today I'm going to tackle that lore list that we talked about in a video a couple weeks ago. And we're going to start with my personal legion, the White Scars. It's one that I've fallen in love with due to some family ties. You can see the ongoing helmet over there, as well as just a pure love for them as a legion and what they stand for. They've got so much flavor that is missed by a lot of people. So I have been diving deep into the lore to try and figure out exactly what a true White Scars army is going to look like. And it actually surprised me. There's a lot of things that are different than what we would assume, just based on the memes and the trends that you see a lot. And there's a lot more involved into fighting like the White Scars actually want to fight. It's not all speed. We'll talk a little bit about that as we get into the list. We're going to go over the list, and then on top of that, I actually went through and broke it down into 3 categories. Just the standard, what it would cost at retail, what it would cost through a discount retailer, and I added a category I call the fluffy category, where we'd look at Horus Heresy and things like that, so we can look at some kit bashing and conversions to really make the army look like White Scars. So let's dive into it, and we'll talk about some of the things that I've used to actually figure this out. Just for a quick reference, I did do a deep dive with Master of the Hunt, the 9th edition faction supplement for the White Scars, as well as their Horus Heresy books, which were a lot of fun to read and learn more about the faction that I've come to love over the last few years. And as always, if you think I missed something or have a comment or suggestion, please let me know down in the comments below. I'm always looking to get as much information as I can, so that I can improve these videos. And if there's a faction you want to see, let me know in the comments below. In my last video about the armies that are the most difficult to make lore-wise, I did promise that I would do all of those 5 main armies. So we're going to start with those in videos like this. And then after that, I want to hear what you guys want to see. What armies do you want me to glorify so that you can play them the way they feel, more like they feel in books? Obviously, Space Marines aren't going to play like book Space Marines, especially the Ultramarines. You're never going to get that full feel, but playing them in a more lore fashion can be a lot of fun, even if it's a little bit more difficult to play. And with the White Scars, this list could be good, but it will take a lot of practice and coordination to get used to how it fights. So let's talk about the basic strategy first. Through all of my research, a lot of the memes and basic information on the White Scars are that they're the fast movers. They rely heavily on hit and run tactics, and that is partially true. There are 2 parts to the way White Scars actually fight. You have the hit and run tactics, which are a big part of their fighting style. But just like the Mongols that they were based on, there's a second part to that fighting style. It's often referred to either as the hammer and anvil or the thresher style. There's a European hammer and anvil and an Asian hammer and anvil tactic. The Asian hammer and anvil requires a large sweeping motion, typically with light cavalry and horse archers, that pushes the enemy force onto your heavier flank or your heavier units that you want. Sometimes in what they call a threshing technique, there's 2 sides to it that are almost herding the enemy into your heavy units. And this is a technique that the White Scars use quite heavily because a lot of their units are master swordsmen and are very, very skilled with bolters, and even go so far as being master marksmen as well. So this ties into how we want to play on the tabletop as well. For the White Scars, we really only have one epic hero, and that's Kurosado-kan, who is a great unit. He does a lot to buff certain units and help them go into the fight. We also have our chaplains on bikes. Unfortunately, those are the only bike leaders we really have anymore, because they removed the captain on bike and the librarian on bike, which is really sad, because deploying those two units on bikes would maybe change this list a little bit. I don't know if I would have actually brought the Kurosado-kan into this list if I had a captain on bike. Most of the other captains didn't really fit the lore, because most of the captains are either in the fast attacks or they're one of the super heavies with your Terminators. So a Terminator captain doesn't really fit. He looks really good in a White Scars. I actually have an extra one that I painted up in White Scars colors, but it doesn't really fit, because most of your captains are either, like I said, master bikers. Some are the heavies, but most of those are typically your second in commands. Others are your master swordsmen, like Kurosado-kan. So that leads us to our main unit. Well, excuse me. I did forget the Stormseers. The Stormseers are very important to this unit, and the Librarians, as you would use when you're buying them. Unfortunately, the cool tricks that they could do in 9th edition don't exist in 10th edition, but having them and deploying them throughout your units is very important to get the feel of a White Scar. When it comes to the difference between chaplains and librarians and the White Scars compared to a lot of other legions, the Stormseers are as much the religious component as they are the librarian for the White Scars. The chaplains are more akin to a warden for the Blood Angels. They're more law enforcement and morale. And you actually see that with the Dark Angels too. So the relationship they have is very different. Your chaplains are going to be the ones leading the charge, motivating the men, and punishing basic stuff, almost commissar-esque, where the Stormseers are going to be the spiritual leaders. A lot of times in the stories, you'll see them on foot. There are some librarians that are on bikes, but a vast majority of them are either in Terminator armor or in just normal armor, depending on which era you're talking about. And they're usually accompanied by a very specific, or by some very specific units, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Now, on to the actual 4 main units that I've included in this list. First one, obviously the Outriders. They're the only real bike unit you have besides the Invader ATVs. I really have a hard time picturing the White Scars really being on Invader ATVs. It just doesn't seem to fit their aesthetic, especially with the person standing on the back. It doesn't fit their quick in, quick out. They tend to feel more like a mobile artillery almost than they do an actual quick strike unit like the Outriders do. And so most of the unit that I built actually has them instead. I do also have to mention that there are a few other characters that I stuck in there partially to fill, but they are units that would be common in a White Scars company, and that's the Apothecary. Obviously, they'll be common in pretty much any unit that is deployed. They're very common across all Space Marines, as well as some Chaos Space Marines. And the last one is a Tech Marine. There will be at least one Tech Marine in a White Scars unit. I don't care how much the Mechanicum and the White Scars butt heads. The amount of vehicles and mobility the White Scars need would necessitate at least a Tech Marine in a company, if not more than one. So they are in this list as well. So Next, like I said, we have the Outriders as one of the main units. But with them doing their job, and in this list to get to 2,000 points, I did include a couple of Invader ATVs, mostly because they're really the only anti-tank you can put in there with multi-meltas. They don't punch great, but they're going to do better than a lot of the rest of this list. Next, we go to the units that aren't as thought of when it comes to White Scars. And there's 3 of them. The first one, like I said, they are Master Swordsmen. So Blade Guard will be very common. With this list, I paired one Blade Guard unit with Kurosato-kan. I do a full unit of 6 so that he gets a full bodyguard and can go into a fight with that protection. I don't know if White Scars would carry shields. I've gone back and forth on that to try and figure out if I would build them that way. A lot of the White Scars fighting style is very fast and fluid. Shields don't tend to lend well to fast and fluid. So they may have some type of buckler, but I would put my money on no shield at all. I could also see a shield pistol combo. That does seem very White Scars. But we'll dive into that a little bit more as we get deeper into the list. We do have some more of the more veteran units. Terminators are not very, very common in the White Scars, but they are a key staple of them. They're throughout the Heresy, and even in later lore, there's a group called the Keshik, who are the chief protectors of the Chapter Master, or in the Heresy, the Kagan. And they are a staple to formations and things like that, where they're the primary point of the anvil, where they want the enemies to break on them. Sometimes they're assault terminators, but often there's a mix, which you can't actually play in the game. When you actually see them in the lore, a lot of times you'll have a mixed squad where half of them will be carrying combi bolters while the other are carrying swords or staves or dows, or a lot of other really cool weapons. Almost all power weapons as well for attack and defense. So for this, I just went with standard Terminators. I think they're the closer of the two that you're going to get. Pure assault Terminators don't really fit this style because they're going to be more of the move slowly in advance while forcing the enemy onto them. So you're not going to want a unit that can't shoot at all. So for gameplay reasons, I went with the standard Terminators there. The next that you see pretty commonly in lore are Eliminators in the White Scars. There are a lot of White Scars that are famous for being very good shots. They're not as much stealth infiltrators as they are ranged assault. Oftentimes these guys will be paired loosely with the Terminator squad in the center of the formations, or to hold backlines, where they can get up high and pick off the enemy as they advance, and as they're being herded by the bikes, which is a really, really cool way of fighting. Something that you see, honestly, I see most with the Craft World Eldar with their Rangers. You see them and the heavy weapons units sit in the back while their faster units try and force you into a box where the real damage will be caused. And that's something we see heavily in the lore with the White Scars as well. So on top of this, I did also include some scouts, which are very common for the White Scars. They do have a lot of scouts that move and try and locate and sneak onto objectives. So they're a very good unit in here. I've also paired it with some Stern Guard veteran squad. While technically a little bit of a stretch, having an assault squad like that does fit the lore. You often see units that are half mounted, half unmounted veterans, where a lot of times they will use a jet bike to get to the fight, and then they will dismount and they do roving gun lines, kind of like you'd see in World War II, where a unit would be advancing as one, but they're popping up and dropping behind cover while rotating who's taking shots. And this is super common in the lore, and I think the Stern Guard is going to be your best bet to represent that. You can also use assault intercessors. I went back and forth on which one of these I was going to use. I think rules-wise, the Stern Guard is just a little bit better right now. But like I said, entirely your choice. If you like one better than the other, great. The one big thing I did find, I don't see a lot of mentions of jump packs for the White Scars, which actually kind of surprised me. I thought the White Scars would be a little bit more jump pack heavy, but I guess not. Like I said, I did include a couple of Invader ATVs, mostly for anti-tank. I did also include a Gladiator Lancer. The White Scars do have at least one heavy tank quite frequently. They have something that can take the bigger shots. And for me, the Gladiator Lancer is the better choice. I also added in an Impulsor. The Impulsor, in my opinion, would be carrying Kurosado Khan and his Blade Guard. They seem to be the best fit there. You could also put the Librarian and the Stern Guard. Oh, and I guess I didn't specify. I have 2 Librarians in there. One's a Librarian with Terminator armor, and one's just a regular Librarian. You could try and do a Librarian in Phobos armor as well. I'm not sure where he'd pair. I'd have to look at his rule set a little bit better. But I do like the feel of the Librarian and the Librarian in Terminator armor. Librarian in Terminator armor would be part of the Keshik, while the regular Librarian would be paired with the Stern Guard. So that is the basic summary of the list. If you guys want the full version, please let me know. I can put it in the comments below or send it to you however works best. But like I said, that is the first half, was making the list. The next question I had was, what would this really entail? So obviously painting White Scars is rough. The white with the red and the yellow, or in my case gold, I found some really good gold paint from Army Painter. So I turned all of the yellow into gold just to make it look nicer, because yellow sucks to paint. It doesn't stay clean very easily, and when it gets dirty, it does not look yellow anymore. But gold looks like gold. So one of the big things to remember with White Scars, these guys will be in fights. While they do pride themselves in being clean outside of the battle, when you're playing on the tabletop, you're in the battle. So dirtying them up a little bit with an umber wash or a little bit of rust here and there isn't the end of the world. I would be more careful when it comes to your characters, but that kind of treatment doesn't hurt your White Scars units, so you don't have to keep them as clean as you would if you're saying an Imperial Fist army. Okay, but next will be the cost. This was a lot of fun, and I put in a lot of time trying to get this figured out. And I'm happy to share this list with you guys as well. Maybe I'll put the link to it in the comments in read-only format, or in the description of the video, so make sure you check that out with what I suggested we do to make this happen. Now, for this list, we have Kurosado Khan, an Apothecary, 3 Chaplains on bike, a Librarian in Terminator armor, a Tech Marine. It'd be 2 boxes of Blade Guard to get the 1 squad, an Eliminator squad, a Scout squad, a Stern Guard squad, a Terminator squad, 2 Invader ATVs, 6 Outrider boxes to get the full 6 Outriders per squad, 1 Gladiator Lancer, an Impulsor, and the White Scars upgrade sprues. Now, that seems like a lot, and it is. It's going to be a lot to get this army here, and a lot of it is not cheap in retail. So, if we go just the face value on those boxes and we buy it from Warhammer.com, that's going to run us $1,500 or $1,558.50, which is a lot. And we have a few things that kind of kill us on there. The Outriders are not cheap, as well as the Gladiator Lancer. But I think the thing that'll probably kill us the most are the Outriders. The Outriders by themselves cost $375 to actually get. That is your biggest investment, followed closely by the Chaplains on bikes at $174. So that chunk of your army is going to be very, very expensive. And they're really annoying to build. So that's going to be your big downside here. You're going to have to commit a lot to build those bikes and make them look good. Because honestly, mine don't. But that gives us what we're looking for at Warhammer cost. Now, the next thing I did was look at value cost. I checked Amazon, Wargame Portal, and a few others. Wargame Portal had the best prices. Amazon was consistent. If you couldn't find it on Wargame Portal, you probably could on Amazon. So that gives us a good balance and saves us about $250 on the total cost. It brings us to $1,315.37. Still expensive. This is not going to be a cheap army to build, but that does get it a little bit more reasonable for a 2,000 point army. It gets us closer to the 2 points per dollar, which I'm not a fan of. I like a little bit more room on that, but it could be a lot worse. Now, the third cost I did was if I wanted to go really fluffy. This means getting the actual Horus Heresy Keshic kit and using them instead of the Terminators. Using some of the White Scars characters from Horus Heresy in lieu of the Librarian and a few others that way to give it a much, much more White Scars feel. And the big one, change out the Outriders for the jet bikes. Luckily, those are a pack of 3 as well, and the cost is almost a 1-to-1. The big thing you're going to run into here is whether or not your opponents are going to be okay with you proxying them, even if you play them as Outrider rules. They do look a lot cooler. They have a lot going for them as well. So you may have some difficulties there, but they will look good. This army will look very good. Now, I didn't do a deep dive on the retail side of this, or on the value side of this. I'm sure you can find some of the more fluffy characters elsewhere. I didn't have a chance to check. I ran out of time to see if I could find them on Wargame Portal or Amazon or anything like that. So this is compared to just the standard cost. So the retail cost, like I said, of the base army is $1,558.50. To do the full fluffy army, because you're going to have a decent amount of resin in there for the characters, is going to run $1,654.50. So about $100 more, but it's going to look really cool. So if you decide to go that route, I would definitely look and see what you can find on Wargame Portal and Amazon and even eBay, so that you can get a lot more of that fluff. And a lot of that fluff you'll probably be able to sub out easily. I think the only place that you'll probably have an issue is jet bikes versus Outriders. I shouldn't say probably have an issue. I think 90% of the time you'll be fine. It may cause some issues in tournament play, maybe. So if you want to take those to a tournament, I would definitely check on that. So we did have a lot of reference material for this. Like I said, we have the White Scars Omnibus, Master of the Hunt. We had the Codex supplement from 9th edition, which was kind of helpful. It didn't have a ton of information on the actual construction of units. It did have some of the company breakdowns for the White Scars, but it didn't really give me too much detail on it. But the places I actually found the most information were the War of the Beast series. There's several different views of White Scars and what they actually are like in a fight. But more importantly was Scars from the Horus Heresy. One of my favorite Heresy books, and it actually gives a very good unit breakdown and structure of what it was like with the White Scars during the Great Crusade and the Heresy. So scaling that down to a playable tabletop size was a lot easier using that format, and pairing that with all the information I collected. So if you guys have any other information that you guys want to talk about with the White Scars, anything you think I missed, or any other unit suggestions that you think would make good additions to this list, let me know in the comments below. And if you have any other factions or armies or sub-factions you want to see me do a list like this of, please let me know in the comments below as well. And don't forget to like and subscribe. We've got a lot of really cool stuff coming, so make sure you check it out. And don't forget to ring the little bell so you get notified anytime we have some new stuff coming as well. I'll talk to you guys next time. Bye.